think it's time to put some fresh wire. This 17-year-old wire, I think it's time to be retired because it's old and hard, and it's been in service for 17 years. It's been through so many heat cycles, actually probably one continuous heat cycle, and it's old, it's brittle, and I already got new bearings on here, so might as well, right, since it's open. So I went to the jungle site and I got some fresh 22 gauge wire here, and I got the soldering station out. So let's replace this old nasty wire. So we'll take a strand off here so we can get a measurement. And we'll just do one at a time here. And that didn't take much to get that off. And then we'll just go ahead and we'll get some wire out here. We'll cut some extra. So we'll cut not that much. And then we'll do the same for all the colors. So we got our nice little starter piece here. And then we also need yellow, gray, and brown. So that's the new wire. So that's all good and fine and dandy. I'll just strip the ends off. One end anyway. We don't need a lot, just a little bit. Where are you? Yeah, you're not in focus anyway. You get the point. And we'll put a little spot of new solder on there, or solder. And we'll put some flux on there because it's old and nasty. And why not? Okay, so that's the blue one. And then we'll just do the same thing for the rest of them, the yellow, the brown, and the gray. This one was really broken. You can tell. So that's what says, hey, self, you need to put new wire on there. All this is all hard and nasty. Alrighty. So that is all the new wires, all nice and pretty and nice and flexible, and should provide many years of service. Unlike this fire hazard, and this is, I can't believe how hard that is. I mean, it is like a stone, and that's all got to feed in this little hole here. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little hole there. All that wire goes in there. So we'll get you back out wide. A little closer. And then all we got to do is feed the wires. When we put it back into the housing here. Nice. Now we'll just get the old housing out. And here's the housing that I temporarily just put back together. So here's the little insulator that needs to go back in eventually. So this is the bottom half of the motor. So obviously the wires will be sticking out of the bottom of it, because that's where all the wire canopy goes to a ceiling fan. Okay. Now I just got to push it back into this little home until the bearing is pretty much flush to the housing. So that may require some light tapping. But in the meanwhile, we'll get some oil. Things a little easier. And we'll oil up the old bearing housing. Make it a little easier to insert it. Of course, I oiled up the wrong bearing. Genius! So let me get my brass Tanya Harding, and I'll be right back. And now I'm back with my brass Tanya Harding. So one thing I want to make sure I do is not to damage the threads any more than I need to make them damaged. So we're going to put a nut back on, and we're going to pound this until this is flush with the housing here, and we're going to make sure that we don't disturb the stator here and start severing wires. So that's a little start, and then we can of course always adjust if we have to. So we'll go ahead and we'll take the nut off here, and then we'll verify that we didn't disturb anything and everything looks good. And now we'll put the nut back on the other side. So we have something to tap against. And now, if you remember, I put some marks on here just in case this is balanced, which I don't think it is because I don't see any drill marks or anything like that. So it probably doesn't really matter which way it goes on. But just for entertainment purposes, we'll line up the housing marks. Now I'll just put a little light oil on here. To assist in assembly. So the goal is to line up all the 4 screw holes before we tap this thing home. And then we can go ahead and put some screws in. And we won't tighten them down, but we'll just use them as a kind of like a guide before we lock it home. Actually, I'll leave one out to verify that I'm all the way flush into the housing. So I think it's pretty much closed up. So now we'll get a appropriate sized screwdriver. Too big. So that's them 4 screws, and of course there's 4 more that go on the other side. Take the nut off, because we're all done pounding on it. And the threads are nice and good. They didn't get damaged from beating on it. Because one method that I use is of course when I tip the bearings out is to beat them out. But you know, if you want to do it the more humane way, you can use a bearing puller. There. So now we got almost a finished fan product. Nice. Just do a little tug test. Make sure we got our wires in good shape. So now we'll put the little insulator back in there. Of course, we have to. First, one thing I had to do first is actually put the other wires back together. So we'll get the wire canopy out, and we'll clean off some of the grime. 17 years of dust. So the way that this went on is first the lock nut went on. So we'll put the lock nut on. And it's not like the lock nut is really needed, you know, other than, you know, to jam it on there. I think the biggest purpose of these is to, if you got a bunch of these all lined up, and you can have all the pull chains all at the same side or whatever. So I need to get some pliers, and I don't have them here, so I'll be right back. Okay. So we'll bottom that out, and then the wire canopy went on, like that, and then a lock nut went on. Not a lock nut, but a lock washer, and wherever that disappeared to. There we are. And then the outer nut. Of course, them pliers don't fit in there, so I have to get a pair that do. I'll be right back. So we'll just tighten this up, and it doesn't have to be a bone-crushing tightness. Alrighty. So that's that for the wiring canopy. And now we can really have something to hold on to while it spin her up. Nice. It feels good in there too. So while we are playing around with the wires, we'll get this insulator ready, and we'll get the wire bundle out here. And we'll go ahead and feed all this stuff in. So that's that. That takes care of that. Leaves us enough room for our wires to come back out. So now, like when I clipped this off, I clipped all these at the little wire thimble here, or whatever you call these single-ended wire connectors, wire splices, whatever you want to call them. So like I said, when I clipped them off, brown went to brown, blue went to blue, and gray went to gray. And the last one, which was the yellow went to white. So that's easy enough to figure out. So we'll go ahead and we'll start snipping off these little guys and marrying them back to get to the fan motor. So we'll do the brown here. So we'll clip him off. Where'd my little clippers go? So the brown wire goes to the reversing switch. And we'll use the brown of the motor. And we'll just tie them together. I have them same little connectors. Over here, closed end connectors, that's what they're called. And we'll get the crimper out. That's that one. And now the next color we'll work on is the blue one. You see what I'm doing? Probably not. Next question will be, well, does it work or does it go up in smoke? I don't know. We'll find out. And then the gray one. Don't roll off, because I know you want to. And the gray one went to the capacitor. stuff like this is very easy to do as long as you do things in an orderly fashion. You take things apart one thing at a time. Because if you were to go completely haywire here and just start chopping everything, you would have got to this part right here where you got two whites, a black, and a yellow, and that all go together, and you'd be like, where the heck did all that crap go? So one of them goes to the light, another one goes to the switch, and the white one is probably the common for the whole assembly here. So that's easy enough to figure out if you didn't hack it to death. Of course, the other variable is I didn't make note of which way the switch come out, but it's not hard to figure out. If when the switch is down, you should be feeling the air blowing on you, and if it's up, you should not feel any air. It should be going up and toward the ceiling. But so if it's backwards, just take the screws out and just flip it. Not a big deal. Alrighty, so now we're working on these guys. So we'll clip all three of them. That's going to be your biggest wire bundle of the whole assembly here. And that's all it takes to put that back together. So now the next step is to jam it all back into the wire canopy here. So we'll get the switch back in, and don't know really how it went, so we'll just sort of take a guess and we'll put it in this way. And of course, if I figure out that it's backwards, I'll just take it back apart and flip it. And we'll find the screws to this. Luckily I kept them all together. So we got some big long screws, and we got a whole little jar of little ones, and we got stuff that wants to roll away. So we'll find the little screws, and they should have been little flatheads, and they're not in here. What if I put them somewhere else? I probably did. That's okay. Put them screws back in. And then we'll just put the pull chains switches back in. And of course they got a little thumb screw here and a lock washer, star lock washer. You can just put the star washer on the inside of the canopy. Of course you really can't see what the hell I'm doing. And of course this would be excellent time if your switches were kind of on the fritz a little bit, where sometimes you would pull the chain and nothing would happen. So if you got opportunity to put new switches in, then so be it. They're easy enough to change. And they are just a finger tight thing. Okay, that's that. And of course the switch here, which I don't have the screws on hand at this time, but we'll just pretend that that's back in there. And the capacitor was it just hangs out in there with a little piece of tape, so you'd have to get yourself a new little piece of tape. And then while you got the wires out, you just make sure that you got your you got access to your light wires and such like that. And the capacitor just sort of hangs out in there, and then you can put your light thing back in there when you're done. So that's that part. So before I put the light on, it's actually a nice little opportunity to put the outside case on, because now that it sits flat. So I got the case all cleaned up and stuff like that. This used to have a mesh in it. I took the mesh out. I actually ripped it out because it was just nasty. And new ceiling fans don't even have the mesh in them anymore, so it doesn't really matter. It just turns black, makes the fan look disgusting. And of course, this is your pretty side. So the pretty side goes, down and hangs out here. So we'll put that on the work table here. And then we got the outside, or the top cover. And that little bugger goes on after we put the hanging hub on. So we'll go ahead and feed the wire through. course, this will be a little tough because it used the jam screws to jam it tight so it didn't twist while it's hanging in the ceiling. So we'll just take a screwdriver here and we'll just give it a little leverage. And of course, once you get past that part where it got all knurled up, it'll get easier. Just like that. And then when you're done, just put the lock washer in there. Did it go in there? I don't think that went in there. I think that's not correct. I think that went on the underside. Because there ain't no way to access that. You dummy. That's what happens when you have it sitting around for 2 weeks and you don't remember how you put it back together. So the nut goes on first. Do as I say, not as I do. Then the lock washer. Then this little bugger. Of course, now it'll go on easier because I cleaned the threads up. And of course, this is the opportunity when you're hanging these things and you want all the pull chains. Let's say you got like I said earlier, you got several of these things all like in a line and stuff like that. You can have all the pull chains, facing all the same direction and the operation. So you can have the light on one side and the fan on the other side, or vice versa, and you can have them all in a row. So they made this so you could do that. So you can sync them, for say, or something like that. So we don't need to go gorilla tight on this stuff here. So we'll just hold a nut here, and we'll just give it a because the little jam screws will hold that in place. So each of these little guys have jam screws, and they got little points on them. So each one of these guys are pointed to lock it onto the shaft. So it was one on each side. You don't have to go ballistic on them things. Just snug. Then you got one on the other side, and that'll lock that hub on. Okay, that's that part. So now we can put the other cover on. And then we use all the remaining screws that had all the lock nuts on. So there's 2, 4, 6 screws. And of course you can orient this anywhere you want. And eventually, I'll have time someday to do clicky over here. That's clicking away. Because it is, I did confirm that it is bearing noise because when it first started happening, I had the fan on, you know, on summer mode, so blowing down on you, and it started clicking. So I reversed the fan, and it stayed quiet for about an hour or so, and then it started clicking. So now it clicks no matter what direction it is and what speed. So the only other variable is the bearings the same size, or are they different? I don't know. But it doesn't matter if I have to order more bearings because I got a spare fan. That'll be all cleaned up, ready to run. Okay, we'll snug them up in a little bit. So all we got to do now is just line up the tabs with the holes so we can put the longer screws in. And then these big long ones is what holds the two halves together. And then the fun part is lining up the screw holes. That's why it's kind of nice to have the mesh gone, because you can see. course, them suckers are long. So we'll just make the process a little quicker. Of course, you don't want to go crazy on the tightness of this, because the only thing you'll manage to do is just strip out the threads, because the little tab is, you know, only about a 1/16 of an inch, so it's only held on by, you know, 3/4 of a thread. So it just snug. Because since this part doesn't move, it's not going to really fall apart on you. So now that's all back together. Now we can tighten these main ones. And of course you want to make sure they're snug, because they do have a lock nut on them. Lock washer, I should say. So that's that. Now the only other thing I have to do is put the little down rod thingy on there, and find where I put the grenade pin. Got one laying around here somewhere. I put it somewhere. There it is. Okay. And then before we go nuts with that, we'll put it in the wire hider here. And then it's just like assembling the fan the first time there. Put the pin in, make sure your wires are not in the way, you know, so don't be beating on it trying to get it through the other side. Make sure your holes is clear, and you put the little pin in, and then you take the jam screws and put them in. So there's a little jam screw, 2 of them on each side. That one on that side, this one on this side. They're not really 180 degrees apart, but it's just to hold the shaft from rocking and rolling. And you don't need to go ballistic on them, because all you'll end up doing is just pushing in the down rod. And that's all it takes to put this little guy back together with brand new hybrids. So now, we'll see if it works. And I'm just going to jam the wires. Don't do this at home at all. I'm going to jam it into an electrical extension cord. See if we get any sparks. And don't ever do this. So apparently this fan is off now, so we'll see if it spins up. I think the right one. There it goes. She's a turning. There it goes. And like I said, these are brand new bearings, so it'll take a little time to seat in. And of course, not having any blades on it, it's, you know, doesn't really run correctly. But at least it works. And that's all it takes to put brand new ceiling fan bearings in an old fan, if it's, you know, worth fixing, and if it's not completely knackered and disgusting and broken blades or bent blades or stuff like that. So that's it for this video. Of course, I got some little minor details to work out, but that's all it takes to put brand new bearings in a 17-year-old Hampton Bay ceiling fan. So I'm sure I'll get many more years of use out of this thing. You know, as long as the windings on the motor don't crap out. You know, you never know when they might go open circuit. But hope you found this video useful for changing out bearings in an older fan. And of course, you know, like I stated in my before I powered this up, don't ever jam wires into an extension cord or an electrical outlet unless you know what the hell you're doing and are a little bit crazy. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.